Going to be reading from EVERNIGHT. The chapter is the 14th chapter and it is called Snared. A colourless scoop of porridge slapped into Double Eight's bowl in a steaming, lumpy glob. He looked at the porridge and then up at the large, serious dinner man behind the counter in his white apron and hat. There was a huge, white-headed boil on the end of the dinner man's nose. Double Eight thought it looked like it might explode at any minute and shoot pus into the porridge pot. Thank you. He turned and sat alone at one of the long tables in the dinner hall. Hundreds of white witches sat around him, mostly silent, eating their porridge and drinking their water. The meals were the same every day: porridge and water for breakfast, bread and cheese for lunch, and mutton stew for dinner. Double Eight began to eat, forcing each slimy spoonful down his throat. The hall was hushed. White witches did not form friendships, because friendships means opening the soul up to someone else. The only sounds were the scuff of chair legs on the floor, spoons scraping on bowls, chewing, sipping. The familiar ring of the bell let everybody know that breakfast was over. Double Eight filed out of the hall, through the main corridor and out to the cobbled streets of the White Witch district. The rain was pouring down, and Double Eight pulled his white hood over his head and held it down against the wind as he hurried along the towering, gloomy buildings towards the gate. There was only one way in and out of the White Witch district, a massive wrought iron gate which opened twice a day, once in the morning and again late at night, to let the White Witches come and go from the factories. The entire district was surrounded by a 50-foot high stone wall. No one could get in or out without using this gateway. Double Eight joined the waiting crowd, the rain pelting him. Thousands of white witches stood shoulder to shoulder, and yet it was as if they were unaware of each other. They did not speak, did not smile, or look at each other. The giant gate screeched open and they flooded out into the streets of King's Haven. It was early enough that most of the city was still asleep. The kingdom tried to keep the White Witches out of sight of the general population, and Double Eight was glad of this, because any time he had walked the streets when people had been around, he had been met with cold, hateful stares and hurtful comments. They don't think of us as people. To them, we're animals. Less than animals. The rain grew heavier. It almost seemed that nature had noticed the crush of filth on the city and was trying to wash it clean. But every layer of grime revealed another, and the bubbling gutters ran with inky, sooty rainwater. Through the factory gates the White Witches marched. Double Eight had spent every day for over a year, since his magic had matured and he had been transferred out of the school, working in the same building. Nothing ever changed. He could have walked the route with his eyes closed, had he so wished, through the factory doors and along the corridor to his station, a heavy workbench in a row of hundreds of identical stations, all set to the sound of dreary, lifeless whispers of White Witch magic. On the bench sat a cauldron, and in the cauldron, same as every other day, Double Eight lit a fire. He opened the cupboards on his bench, bringing out jars and bottles of ingredients, and he began to weigh and count them out. He had only ever produced one type of spell. He knew that there were countless spells in the world, from the hags from Westerly Witch invented new wild ones all the time. White witches made the same spells day after day, moon after moon, year after year. Sometimes he would imagine new spells, picture glorious shafts of dazzling colour exploding from his cauldron. How sweet it would be if, just for once, he could use his imagination, create something wild that did not have to be numbered and inspected and drained of life and colour. Of course, he had always known that he could not share these thoughts with anyone. Even as a child, he had sensed that the others did not feel the same way. The White Witch teaching said that emotions were weakness and all thoughts should be to serve Mrs. Hester and the Silver King. This had made him hide his secret deep inside, made him feel like he was a freak, like there was something wrong with him. But maybe soon he'd be free of all that. Ever since his secret meeting with the hag down in the laundry room, he had been applying a few drops of the gateway spell every night, though there had been no obvious effects. He wondered how long he'd have to wait, how many more days until he was free, and if he'd be ready when the time came. Double Eight's job, the same as every other White Witch in his workshop, was to produce the enchantment that turned everyday paper into witch paper. It was a relatively simple spell to produce. First, Double Eight took a piece of paper and followed the instructions in the Silver Kingdom spellbook, written by Mrs. Hester, copying out a set of detailed symbols: the bird, the heart, the compass, and the cloud. After the symbols were complete, Double Eight took the paper and put it in the cauldron, where it began to wilt and crumble and blacken in the flames. Next, Double Eight took the other ingredients required to make the spell: a drop of distilled moonlight, a spoonful of powdered eagle feathers, the needle of a compass, and added them. Then came the most important part of the entire spell-making process, the witch's prayer. Double Eight spoke the words softly, reverently. Born of mind, born of fire, born of Mother Earth's desire, use it wisely, use it well, my heart, my blood, my gift, my spell. A spark of light. The cauldron vibrated and filled with swirling purple smoke. Quickly and efficiently, Double Eight brought out a set of identical spell bottles and filled each one with a little of the spell he'd created, until the cauldron was empty. He packed the bottles all in a box padded with straw, wrote the spell on the box, and rang a bell on the end of his station. A minute later, an old woman approached the workstation, pushing a trolley. She placed the box in her trolley to join the rest. All would have their colour removed. She left without glancing at Double Eight or speaking a word. This is how every day had gone for over a year now. Make a spell, then ring the bell. Double Eight could not know it yet, but today would turn out to be very different. Today would change everything. Lunchtime was approaching, and Double Eight was satisfied with his work. He had managed to produce 8 sets of spells, a full box up on his average. Wiping a hand over his brow, he felt his stomach rumble. And that is when he noticed the 2 white witches approaching his bench. They were big, big men, one with brown skin and shaven head, the other with skin so pale it was almost blue, and a head of messy grey hair. They stopped at Double Eight's station, looked him up and down. 885467, said the man with the brown skin, using Double Eight's full name. Double Eight nodded. His throat was drying up. The pale man brought out his wand. Before Double Eight could react, the man pointed his wand at Double Eight, and one of the spell bottles in the revolver chamber flashed bright. Ripping, searing pain tore through Double Eight's head. He tried to scream, but found he was falling into spinning darkness. He was unconscious before he hit the floor.